For centuries, the Sabbath had been the key marker for the Jews. Wherever they went, whether they were dispersed in other nations or at home, the Sabbath was one of their number one things. That marked them out from the other nations to stop one day a week and dedicate it to the Creator. And it marked them out as people who were following the Creator God, because He told them in the law, keep the Sabbath day to make it holy. And for them, this was pivotal. It wasn't an option. It was who they were. It was built into their very psyche. They were created to have fellowship with the Creator. They were meant to pause from their toil, and the same as the Creator did Himself. He was a worker. He worked 6 days creating the universe in their story, and on the seventh day He rested, because He said, well, it's done, it's complete. And the Sabbath was a moment to sort of sit back and reflect. And I think Jesus, as a worker, He understood the satisfaction of finishing a job, building something, a cupboard, a chair, whatever it was, and taking time to go, yeah, that looks good, I like that. Or for a farmer to finish ploughing a field and see the wheat coming up and saying, yeah, that looks good. Or an architect building a building and finishing it and saying, yeah, I like that. So it's that sort of deep satisfaction in a job done and done well. And I think that's the kind of spirit that Jesus was looking for on the Sabbath. The Jews say that God created a thing called Menuha, M-E-N-U-H-A, on the seventh day, and it meant happiness or stillness or perfect harmony. No strife, no fighting, no fear, no distrust, but a space of quiet and reflection and togetherness. Now, the Pharisees had turned it somehow from a time of glad appreciation into a time of tedium and sort of strictures. And they made every effort possible to bind the day up, to watch for deviations from the rules that they'd made up, and the minutiae, tiny details about what you could and couldn't do on the Sabbath. Jesus approached the Sabbath with the same common sense that He has as a carpenter. He looks at the job, looks at what needs to be done, and there's a sort of practical necessity about what you do and don't do on the Sabbath. So a few times when they questioned Him on this, about the way His disciples didn't keep the Sabbath, He turned immediately either to common sense things like, well, if your sheep falls down a hole or your donkey, well, don't you go and get it out on a Sabbath? Like it's just what you need to do. And in this situation, He goes to the scriptures and He said, I like this, because He'd obviously embedded this story so clearly in his thinking and thought his way into David's life. So when David's on the run from Saul, he's a wanted man, they get to the priests and they say, we really need food. And the priests take the showbread, which was the special bread they had in front of the altar there in the tabernacle itself, which was sort of a symbol for fellowship between God and man. And He said, yeah, look, take this and eat it. And Jesus said, well, look, in an emergency or in a difficult situation like that, well, common sense rules, and you need food. Well, there's food there. It's not so special you can't eat it. So it's great the way Jesus sort of takes the scriptures and makes common sense out of it. Now, Jesus aborts the discussion about the rules and rule keeping with an ambit statement that is absolutely mind-blowing. If you're a Jew that day, to hear Jesus say, well, actually, the Sabbath's mine. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I mean, that would have been mind-blowing. Is He really saying that He's the Creator? Like, it's the Creator gave us the Sabbath, Lord of the Sabbath? That's blasphemy. That's about as bad as it gets. Or, what if He is, really? This is the Creator speaking here in our synagogue. He's present. That would have made you really sit up and take notice. But there's another thing here, I think. Remember, Adam had been given responsibility in the world, and he was told by the Creator, I want you to keep the Sabbath. The Sabbath's important. And Moses, of course, makes it much more part of Israel's psychology. But Jesus, as the son of Adam, as the son of Abraham, as the son of Israel, he feels like, well, I have ownership of the Sabbath. It's been gifted to us as our day, where we can join with the Lord of the Sabbath together as lords of the earth, because we've been made lords of the world. And there's kind of that nice feeling of the Son of Man and the Son of God speaking simultaneously, if you like, to say the Sabbath belongs to us. Well, you can imagine the uproar in the synagogue as people turned to one another. What in the world? The Pharisees would have been livid. I mean, they were shocked to the very core of their being. And some of them were probably sincere men, and they were just mind-boggled by this. But the Sabbath was an ideal day for doing miracles, and it's a celebration of completeness and perfection. So in verse 6, where Jesus enters the synagogue to worship, a place where the community comes together, and an ideal day for healing, for bringing wholeness. But what's there as Jesus walks in? Was there a buzz of expectation? Was there a Simeon and an Anna waiting for the Messiah, looking eagerly for him? No. There was a kind of a restrained group of people, some of them critics, just poised and waiting for Jesus to make a mistake. And right in the centerpiece of this drama was a man with a withered arm, and it's pretty obvious. And you can see the eyes sort of moving from Jesus back to the man. See, what's he going to do? Is he going to heal this man on the Sabbath? He's going to break the Sabbath rules? Well, there's something of an abomination about that, really. Here in God's presence, they were meant to be, before the Word of God, together as his people, reflecting the character of God. And God's not like that. And Jesus, Mark says, in this moment, Jesus got extremely angry. He burred up. He saw exactly what was going on. He saw in a flash what was in their thinking. And so he takes the challenge up and he says, okay, stand up. He gets the fellow to stand up. So the whole synagogue, you imagine, everybody drew a breath. What's going to happen? And did they care about that man? How long had he been there? How long had that shriveled hand been a symbol of, being invalid, an invalid, not able to do as much as other people? And Jesus looks on him as one of his children who needs to be made whole. And he reads the situation quite differently. And his anger burns, and he says, stretch out your hand. First of all, he said, tell me. He turns the inquisition on them. Is it right to do good on the Sabbath, or the opposite? Well, what could they say? They'd have to say, well, it's the Sabbath, you do good. And Jesus said, well, stretch out your hand. And as that man stretches out his hand, the crippledness goes, and you can imagine him looking at it and go, it's working. He's back to being whole. And you can imagine the electrifying effect around the synagogue as that member of their congregation is restored by a man who says, I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I'm the Lord of making things perfect and whole so that you can rest and be restored. And restitution is the key. There was no real heart for that man in that congregation, I don't think. It was a pretense of spirituality. And the silence must have been deafening when Jesus asked that question. But here are the two kingdoms. Jesus' kingdom full of life and hope and completion and wholeness, and the shriveled up kingdom of the Pharisees, which was kind of like desiccated, like narrowed and shriveled and sort of miserable. And when Jesus arrived, the true Lord of the Sabbath, what a difference.